Our next storyteller, Dave Mowry, is on a mission to shatter stigma, one joke at a time. Thank God for some relief, huh? Once a successful businessman and entrepreneur, Dave's life descended into darkness due to his struggles with bipolar disorder and extreme anxiety. He calls these 14 years of suffering his lost years. Years later, Dave took up stand-up comedy, a class for stand-up comedy for people with mental health challenges, and everything changed. Today, he shares his humor by teaching stand-up comedy to others with mental health conditions, performing, writing books, and writing for BP Magazine, and speaking to local, state, and national groups. Dave recently published his book, OMG, That's Me. What started out as a couple of blog posts blossomed soon into a following of over 200,000 people who have all read and been touched by Dave's stories. Welcome, Dave.
Hello. There is humor in my stories, and no, really, I want you to laugh. So my job tonight is to tell you my story, and part of my story is that I live with bipolar disorder and severe anxiety, which is interesting because I also live in Happy Valley. But Happy Valley is really a misnomer. There is no valley. And having a mental illness, I am sensitive to discrimination. And I see discrimination where regular people might not. Take happy hour, for instance. I think that's being discriminatory. There should also be a crappy hour for depressed people. Bipolar people could go to both. And having a mental illness and being single is challenging. You want to have a relationship, but when do you tell somebody you like that you live with mental illness? On the first date? Too soon. If you wait till after the third date, too long, and you're not being honest. So I came up with a solution. There should be a dating service for people with mental illness. I can see the postings now. Paranoid white male seeks paranoid white female to share compound in Idaho. Or a paranoid female seeks male with no government connections. Or my favorite, dual personality female seeks dual personality male for double dates. When I was first diagnosed, my kids were small, and it was important that we talked about it, so we sat around the kitchen table and we talked about it. And the next day, my daughter Megan went to school. She was in first grade, and in art, she was drawing. And her teacher came up to her and looked over her shoulder and said, "Megan, that's interesting. What are you drawing?" And Megan said, "It's a bipolar bear." And the teacher looked at it and said, "Well, can you tell me about it?" And Megan said, "Sure, it's white. It lives at the North Pole, and it takes Prozac." There's also a story that actually one was not one that I wrote, but a part of what I wrote, but I saw it on a TED Talk, and it's about Sarah. And it's similar to the one about Megan, but Sarah was in second grade, and she was drawing. And the teacher came up to her and said, "Sarah, what are you drawing?" And Sarah said, "It's a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But Sarah, nobody knows what God looks like." And Sarah said, "They will in a minute." But there was a time when my illness was so bad that I could barely get out of bed. And if I did get out of bed, I could barely make it to the couch. And if I made it to the couch, it was everything I could do just to sit, just to be, just to hold it together, and just to exist. And this went on for several months, and then one day my wife packed a bag, and she came up to me and she said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Sure." But I was confused. I thought we were going on a vacation. She took me to the hospital. And on the second day, I met with the psychiatrist, and he said, "How's it going?" And I said, well, not too bad, but the service here sucks. I ordered margarita when I got here, and it still hasn't arrived yet. He wrote something down in his pad, and then he said, well, do you know where you are? And I said, well, my wife said it was going to be a surprise. I'm hoping St. Thomas. No, he said, it's St. Vincent's. I said, oh, can I get that margarita now? But one day, at my lowest, and this is a serious part of my talk, one story. One day at my lowest, I went to a small park that's not far from here, and I sat on a picnic table. And the sun was at an angle where the water, there was a stream, and the sun sparkled off the water. And as I sat there with a gun in my hand. And I wanted so much to end the suffering, to end the pain. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I realized at a certain point that ending my life would solve my suffering and give me peace, but it would leave my family with guilt. And I knew this because my father had committed suicide. But in my story, even suicide can have humor to it. Today, I deal with those thoughts of suicide with humor. And my wife Heather has been really, really, really supportive. And one example is that when things were really bad, I decided to end it all. So I went into the bathroom and I took a bunch of pills. Afterwards, I called Heather for help. She said there are more pills under the sink. Very helpful. But living with bipolar disorder is hard. The ups and downs are hard. The depression is awful. But in between the highs and the lows, there is some relief. But for me, the severe anxiety was the worst. It was constant, and it was awful, and it never went away. And one of the ways that my anxiety manifested itself was that if I went into a public restroom and anybody else was in there, I couldn't go. I'd go up to the urinal and I'd stand there and I'd try and try, but it wouldn't work. I couldn't go. I was sure everybody was staring at me or everybody was judging me. So I'd go out in the hallway and wait for maybe 5 minutes or sometimes for half an hour until nobody was in the restroom, and then I'd go in and I'd be able to go. And then about 3 months ago, Heather and I went to see a movie. And after the movie, I went into the restroom and there were other people in there, and I went up to the urinal and I went. And it's at that point that I realized how far I'd come. And I stepped back from the urinal and I went, yes, yes, yes! The other people in the restroom looked at me like I was crazy. I said, no, not anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Humor is healing. Dave serves on the board of ASHA International and is a member of the ASHA Storytellers team. According to the American Federation for Suicide Prevention, men die by suicide nearly 4 times as often as women. Yet, men find it hard many times to share their struggles and ask for the help they need. Dave wants to change that, one joke at a time.